when we're done, I've got to rush. Okay,
Me
we're live
too.
right now. That's cool. So you don't get to hear the rest of that message.
Mhm.
Hi everybody. I was just about to share something with Leo. It's gonna be, but you have to wait now because we're busy with we're live on the air. Good to see you all again. Well, you know what I mean, virtually. How are you doing, Leo?
Good. Hope you too.
Good. Yeah, I'm brilliant. Yeah, really good. We've got some chaos as usual. There's always some chaos. Um, our internet was off yesterday afternoon for no reason, and I was in the middle of something with a client. Oh my word! So I had to go to the. Fortunately, the network was still working. So that's a technical. There's nothing to do with what we're talking about today. So what we're going to be talking about. Last week we covered some more things on addiction, and we're going to be following up a little bit more. But in particular, last week I mentioned a sustainable process. You know, what can we do that will actually help us to go somewhere from a place of challenge and trouble and strife, for example, to a place of sunshine and light? How can we get there? Well, whatever process we choose, it's got to be attainable, because if it ain't attainable, we're not going to get there, are we? So the process we're looking at is the idea that, first of all, number one, recovery is possible from whatever it may be. We've got to begin to believe that recovery is possible. I'm not going to go into the hows of that right now, but we will be later today. So we need to be able to envision, for example, if we're addicted to something, we need to be able to envision a non-addictive life. That might be difficult. Self-discovery is the third one. What's important about self-discovery? What do we need to know about ourselves in order for us to be able to move along? So self-discovery is crucial. And then another one that relates to envisioning something. Against all the odds, we need to be able to envision a different future from the one we have right now. That too is also quite difficult. So again, we're going to come back onto that in a little while. But before we do that, what I'm going to do today is share my own personal story. Now, this is a story that I've condensed into about 12 minutes, but it's been on for quite a few years. It went on whilst I was training to be a psychologist. It went on before I started that training, although I didn't know that a lot of the things that were happening were actually happening. You could say that I was too close to the action. So I'm going to share that story with you right now. And at the end of it, I'll pass the ball over to Leo so that he can pick up anything that I may have said. Are you good with that?
I hope so. My sound sometimes like dropping out some sounds, and sometimes I cannot get parts of what you're saying, but I hope I'll get enough to insert something from my point of view or from my experience. So go on, and I'm here listening. Just in case I don't get it, I'll ask, okay?
We'll see what happens. So this is how it goes. Consider this. How would you feel if somebody said to you that you are no longer fit for purpose? I was devastated. But to explain that devastation, I need to take you back to a point a few years ago. I thought I was broken. And I'd had this terrible day at the office. Stress. And the stress was, of course, absolutely work-related. Or was it? Now, I know plenty about stress, PTSD, psychological therapies. I need to know. It's my job. So why wasn't I applying my knowledge to myself? Well, the thing is that just because I'm trained doesn't mean I don't sometimes need help. That would have been a wise thought at the time. But the problem was my head was full of what ifs. I'd lost connection with what now, you know, that magical moment where everything happens. And my thinking was drifting between somewhere back then, wherever that was, and this imagined utopia in the future. I just want to share a few current statistics, and they relate to stress. 74% of UK adults have felt so stressed at some point over the last year that they felt overwhelmed or unable to cope. 32% of adults said they had suicidal feelings as a result of their stress. 16% of adults said they'd self-harmed. Those are quite scary statistics, aren't they? So I often use statistics to inform where I target my attention as a professional. I felt broken, and such statistics weren't much use. In fact, they were downright. So as I said, I mentioned this earlier, there's a lot of talk about work-related stress, but the truth was my stress originated in a failing personal relationship. The problem was it took a lot of months to work that one out and move on. So I went back to that difficult day, you know, the one stress. I went home, changed, and pointed my bike at the forest. 5 kilometers later, I broke my bike and had a tantrum. Yeah, there was a tantrum. The world was a mean and nasty place. Nobody's fault except mine. Even the manufacturer of the smashed gear component, it was their fault. And that was supposed to be a stress-relieving bike ride. So what did I learn from that experience? Nada. Nothing. My head stayed firmly buried in the sand and I acted like I was okay. It worked because nobody interrupted my Oscar-worthy performance. And a few months later, I crashed out again while I was out training. No big deal. Well, it hurt, but no big deal. Just a top of the tibia fracture, followed by several weeks off work while I recovered. A year later, 1 year, I was addicted to opiates, also known as pain relief medication. But still, the pain ran right through my entire body. More opiates, no pain relief. More opiates, no pain relief. And then came a letter from a senior doctor. You have an appointment. Bring a partner, friend, blah, blah, blah. Well, that wasn't worrying. So I better polish my wheelchair because me or one of our 3 under 7s has probably dropped food on it. More likely me, actually. So there we are, sitting in the doctor's office. It was a beautiful spring day. I remember it clearly. There was sunlight flooding in through the window. And then the doctor talked. I'm sorry to tell you, Steve, that you shouldn't expect to leave your wheelchair again, ever. And then we were outside the hospital building, in silence. The opiate addict was now fully confined to a wheelchair. And when that medical report landed on my employer's desk, I was called to another examination, this time with an occupational health doctor. He pushed me hard and more than once tried to get me to admit that I was no longer able to do my job. No, I wasn't having that, so I pushed back. I'd lost enough self-respect. I didn't want to give up anymore, and especially to this person who didn't once look me in the eye. Images of my partner and our young children ran on repeat through my mind until the doctor's voice dragged me back to reality. You are no longer fit for purpose. He actually said that. You are no longer fit for purpose. The meeting ended abruptly moments later, and with those words digging deep into every aspect of my being, the fog around me became so deep that I lost my sense of self completely for quite a long time meaning several months. And the pain increased to a point where a medical professional asked me for my pain score, usually a number between 1 and 10. Mine was often 15 or more. They worked hard to treat the pain with a cascade of interventions, minor surgery, medical processes, medications, physiotherapy, MRI, CT, X-ray. It was all about the body until a physiotherapist came along and taught me how to breathe through the pain. Now this sounds a bit wacky, breathing through the pain. So you've got a pain in your hand. So you breathe in through the pain and breathe out through the pain. Sounds a bit strange, but it's absolutely incredible. And this was my first mindfulness intervention. And like I said, it had a remarkable effect after a few weeks of frequent practice. Strange things started to happen too. So while I was breathing through the pain, I noticed images and sensations from my past. In particular, when I felt depressive symptoms, and I had those quite often, weirdly, I always had heightened knee pain. Well, apparently that's not weird at all, because these are factors associated with knee pain and physical function. So this mind-body situation beginning to kick in. So I've got pain in my knee that's not really there. All the tests have shown that there's nothing really going on in that knee, but yet there's still pain, and there's still feelings of depression. Mind-body manifests in pains in the knee and other places, but I'm focusing on the knee because that's what happened to me. And none of the medics were able to link those things together at that time. But they did respond to the depressive symptoms. And what they did, they offered sessions with a psychologist and more medication. I didn't need more of that, but they offered more. The psychologist was cool. Although I often noticed a slight frown when she saw me in the waiting room. And it's true, I wasn't exactly a model patient at the start of our relationship. You probably heard that joke about doctors not making the best patients. Well, psychologists don't make the best patients for other psychologists either. But I did get on board with the psychotherapy program, and as challenging as it was to open up all those firmly locked doors, we did take steps forward. She asked me what I wanted. I said to get back to the way things were. She didn't need to tell me that there was no going back. Still, those sessions did enable me to move forward, but the pity was that they stopped after 8 sessions, and I was offered a group program. We've talked about this in recent weeks. So while all of this is going on, don't forget there's a family. And by this part of the story, we'd moved our home from the Netherlands back to the UK. There were 3 children when I crashed out. Now there's 6. So there was massive motivation to do something about the morphine-addicted partner and dad. Not to mention my self-esteem. So what was this group program all about? Well, I was no stranger to group programs to young people and various community groups. So to be offered a place in a therapy group, to be honest, scared the hell out of me. I would be asked to share my vulnerabilities in front of people I didn't know. People would judge. I had enough on my plate with my own problems. Why on earth would I want to get involved with other people's problems? Sounds a little selfish though, doesn't it? So let's pop back to a time before the accident just for a minute. My partner used to joke that my head was so big that one day I wouldn't be able to get through doorways. I never lacked confidence. That's the way it was. So the guy who joined that pain management program was a complete opposite and would rather have watched the process through a video feed, and especially with no camera on me. And there was another problem too. The team who was to work with the group were multidisciplinary, and one of them was a nurse practitioner who specialised in pain medications. I'd heard that she didn't support the use of opiates for pain management. And the addicted me had a meltdown about the possibility of my pain meds being interfered with or even removed. So let's think about addiction for a minute. We talked about this a few weeks ago as well, but I'm going to repeat it because it's worth hearing. The UK has the highest consumption rate of prescription opioids for pain management in the world. And that's despite declining rates globally. I was one of those statistics. Looking back at my past self, I see some things that give me the shivers. I was completely addicted and displaying behaviour associated with addicts. The thought of stopping the medication was unthinkable. I had no control concerning the substance. I regularly took more than prescribed and became really sneaky at getting more so I would never run out. I was never going to run out anyway, but something in my head said, you might run out, you might run out. So make sure you've got plenty. Strange thinking. And I often had an overwhelming desire for more than I was supposed to take. And I don't mind admitting that occasionally I did take more than I should. And the biggest thought was that my addictive behavior was not causing negative consequences. It absolutely was not. Well, of course it was. But inside of me, I thought that it wasn't. And I needed more because it wasn't reducing the pain. So that became a vicious circle. It can happen to anyone. It's not a sign of a weak character or moral failing. Science has proved that. It's a chronic brain disease that can happen to anyone. It happened to me, it can happen to you, it can happen to one of your best friends. But despite this, people still believe that addiction is a result of weak character or moral failing. Like I said, addiction experts have argued that that's not true. People who are addicted don't lack morality or strong character. It's about a disease that's actually a mental illness. All I needed was simply a blanket to place a soothing comfort over the physical and mental pain, even though the morphine didn't really take any of the pain away. So I continued to use and increase despite the consequences. So I needed intervention. That's where the group came in. The group intervened, the group talked to me, the group listened to me, the group empathized. All my concerns were thrown out the window. It was an incredible group, and it got me on the road to recovery. So the Steve whose head was at risk of not getting through doorways started to come back. Just glimpses at first, like, hey, I'm here, going on inside there somewhere. The addictive behavior didn't end straight away, it took a while. And I need to note for myself as much as anybody that I became a pain medication addict because the pain I had was overwhelming and I was prescribed opiates. And that group turned some of the lights back on, enough for me to say to a GP that, hey, I need help, I need to get off this stuff. And over a long period of time, that's what happened. I did get off. I did become me again. I did become the psychologist, the youth and community worker, the coach that I once was, if not a little bit better, because I had an incredible life experience. It wasn't all negative. It seems all dark, negative, and difficult. But the learning that took place within there was absolutely incredible. So I did it through mindfulness, personal development, coaching, talk therapy, group therapy, and, as I just said, resurrecting my skills to help other people in all these areas. So I took my experiences of pain and addiction and packaged them into programs to help other people. One thing that was tattooed onto my psyche, my brain, my mind, whatever you want to call it, was never again. I would not go back to the way things were before. And I was absolutely fit for purpose. That's what I started to believe once more. That's a little bit about my story. There's an awful lot more to it than that. Just kind of the tip of the iceberg. I hope you heard all of that, Leo. Is there anything you would like to respond to before I talk again?
It's an incredible story, and it's always very positive when someone is able to share their experience like you, because so many people suffer to themselves. Just before the call, I had a client who, and she's not actually a client, she asked me if she could address and if I could take her, but the price seemed too high for her. And I asked, would you like to join a group? And the first thing she is scared about is, I don't want anybody to hear my story. And probably the message is still there. I haven't answered yet, but I think that the main thing to understand is that sharing is very, very important because so many people suffer inside themselves, to themselves. It's one thing, we really lack support in our society, but the other thing is that we'll lack the will to ask for support and for help. And we consider help as being medical help, what is being uh, listed in the official uh, protocol, or what is included into your like certificate, what's or what you can afford. But it's much more to the medical help and to whatever protocols there are, the official ones. They are scientifically proven, that's fine, but very often they do not include the neighboring fields, the many other sides of human life. And basic thing which is needed is human support, people helping uh, other people, showing up and sharing the pain. And the trick is, it's not just words or some woo-woo stuff. It's really the way the nervous system works in people, because people are social beings and we are created not to beat each other or uh, kind of win every battle. We are basically, the main instrument for survival is support and collaboration, being together and helping each other. And groups are basically psychotherapy and self-support groups and self-help groups are what are the basic things that people need along, and probably sometimes the first thing after we get
Yeah.
medical help and the acute case is kind of over, the acute period.
Yeah, I think I just want to repeat that a little bit about the acute period. I called it a cascade of intervention. I think that was your phrase a couple of years ago. I
Might
think it
be,
was.
I don't know.
I don't mind admitting it. It's a great phrase, cascade of intervention. So what happened? I went to an orthopedic doctor who looked at the fracture and kept looking for a long time afterwards to try and work out what was going on. And then I went to a pain management specialist. And then I went to his boss, who was a bigger pain management specialist. And during all of this time, I had x-rays, I had different sorts of scans. I can't remember all the different sorts of scans. And then I had treatment using electricity into the nerves, all kinds of stuff, really, really all kinds of stuff. And what did it do? It enabled me to spend a lot of time in hospital waiting rooms, and it didn't make me feel better. So what happened? Because I didn't feel better psychologically, I became more sick, if that is what a good way to put it. I wouldn't normally put it in that way, but I think it's good sometimes to be a little bit blunt about it. I felt worse because of all this cascade of intervention that wasn't helping. And some of it was really invasive. Some of it hurt and created other pain. Some of it involved twice, in fact, involved using anesthetic to make me sleep while they dug around in my knees. You know, that didn't make me feel good. And then there was recovery time from that. So you became a shell that was being prodded and poked and pushed around. I'm not having to go to doctors because they do an incredible job and they work hard and they do their best to fix things that are broken. But physically, and it took a long time to discover this, I wasn't broken. Not physically. I was at first, but that got mended.
Mm-hmm.
So the challenge was in other things. And being able to eventually speak to people and get out of my own way was a big one. I joked about the psychologist. I made her life hell for the first couple of sessions. And I don't mind admitting it. I didn't do it because I'm a bad person or a horrible person or anything like that. I did it because in a strange sort of way, trying to protect myself. I didn't want to be a client of a psychologist. I knew what that was all about, and I didn't want to be that. So I made it difficult for her until I kind of, not in a romantic sense, but fell in love with her. She was fun. She was funny. She enabled me to open up and talk and think and move forward. So things changed. And the group did the same in a different way. And I think that's why we've got to look at groups as being a crucial part of the healing journey. They really are. Before we go any further, what we've not mentioned today is ask questions. If you've got a question, please ask it. Get that question out there. Let's see what the question is. We will get get onto it very quickly and provide some answers. If it's a complicated question, we might provide a whole show next week. We'll see what happens. But please ask questions. There's no such thing as a bad question. Okay. So, Leo, would you like to add any more before we move on a little bit?
I don't think so. Let's move on. I know you've got a lot to say, and I'm always ready to adapt.
So let's have a look at these attainable processes. If somebody, let me just go back to, so I'm sitting in a wheelchair with this occupational health doctor who said I was no longer fit for purpose. In other words, you just lost your job, was basically what he was telling me, and that was a big one. So if somebody had said to me that day, "Hey Steve, recovery is possible," I think I may have said something quite rude, because it didn't feel like that. Absolutely, it didn't feel like that. So how do we get people to understand that recovery from whatever their challenges are is actually possible? How do we do that? Question, and okay, we can change my question slightly to take Sam from Ireland. How do we deal with addiction?
So, will you?
I'll start.
Yeah.
We start using the attainable process, which I actually work to. The first thing is to enable people to understand that their recovery is possible. It is possible to recover from being addictive to whatever it might be. But how do we do that? We need to look for the source of the addiction. Where did it start? What triggered it? And that might be very, very difficult. Perhaps as difficult for the therapist as it is for the person suffering from whatever it is they suffer from, including the addiction. So how do we do that? What sort of things can we do? One of our jobs as therapists or coaches or both is to ask great questions. So if we can ask our clients questions that are clear enough and simple enough for them to dig back into their past, to look at what's been going on, that's a good starting point. But not everybody can look back. Not everybody is able to look back because of the traumas they suffered in the past. So what can we do with that, Leo? That's one of your areas of expertise. Now you have some clients. Let's just hold on to Paul's question. I'm going to come to it, Paul, but we'll just hold on to it for a minute.
Well, then it was always thought that addiction is some kind of bad habit or moral failure, and the person who's addicted is inherently bad or spoiled and probably dangerous. But it's only partially true concerning being dangerous or yes, people, addicted people and people under any kind of toxic state, in intoxicated state, are really dangerous and they do terrible things. But the one thing we should realize that it's the addiction is is viewed now in a bit different way like as a different thing. It is the kind of a pain reliever for someone being in constant pain. It's a way of adapting oneself to the constant state of terror or fear or anxiety. Now we try to view the addiction as a kind of self-soothing or self-medicating way, or what's the word? Forgetting things. English is not is my second language, so sometimes I just lack
Yeah.
some words. But and if and usually the pain comes not basically from uh, not just from the physical pain. It's not only physical pain and not necessarily physical pain, but it's mental pain. It's some kind of experience that brought you into a terrorized state or constant anger or something, and it's a source of terrible discomfort. And so people try to seek soothing, and alcohol or drugs or sex or gambling or whatever things people do to distract themselves from these thoughts and these states of anxiety. So what we have to deal with is basically find out what's the source of pain, and and the main goal or target for us is to deal with it with this physical this well it's it well the trick is it we call it mental pain, but basically it's physical because it is reproduced by the autonomic nervous system and the brain, central nervous system and autonomic nervous system. And as soon as you get this mechanism that there's something, yes, it is something wrong with me and it's inside, but it's quite possible to understand where it comes from, why you react that way, and what makes you seek seek these soothing behaviors or substances. And so that takes us away from the idea of having a strong character and just saying no, because when you feel that bad, when addiction, well, using drugs or alcohol or whatever again may be the behaviors, we usually learn it from our well, from the society, from the family, from friends, from teachers, from people on the neighborhood, because alcohol is one of the uh, well well known and always used self-soothing, self-medicating substances for centuries. And it's we get it from our families and neighborhoods that whenever you feel bad, whenever you feel sad, and even if you feel joyous, you have to alcohol is the first thing to soothe your pain and uh, make your joy bigger. And so we have to analyze that and see, are there any other ways of bringing ourselves to a more stable and joyful and calm state? And yes, there are, because you have what you have to do, you have to self-regulate, not self-soothe or distract yourself, or to find like mama's little helper to feel better. You have to find other ways to bring you to a state of calm and safety. And it's a long story where you get the pain. Usually it's the family or something else, and usually it's your childhood. That's why psychologists are so crazy about digging into your childhood and make you draw pictures and tell the stories about mom. I usually say that moms are the red caviar of the therapist.
Yeah. Can I? There is so much in what you've just been talking about, Leo. What I'd like to do
Too
is I
much.
just want a little response to some of the things you just said, but there's also a couple of questions that are worth responding to as well
Yes,
from
yes, please.
Carl and Molly in particular.
Hmm.
I'll come to those in a minute. So I know a lot of psychologists. We use this analogy of an onion. So in my case, I was the onion, the whole thing. And to find out what had triggered all this stuff that was going on with me after a simple, and it was a simple knee fracture, the layers of the onion needed to be peeled and looked at. What's on this layer? What's on that layer? Until we got back far enough into the onion to discover where the source of my trauma really lay. And we did do that. We got in there, we found a couple of things that one I was kind of aware of, but I pushed it to one side. But I don't really need to give that any attention, do I? No. The other one in particular, I had no idea that it was there, but it was easy to confirm once we discovered it. And that was with the help of the psychologist. I couldn't have done it on my own, absolutely not. Regardless of my academic experience and my practical experience, I couldn't have used that on myself to get to the bottom of it. So it's about peeling back the layers of an onion. And this thing about soothing. So I was using all these crazy opiates to relieve pain. And I said myself, they weren't taking the pain away. That pain nurse who I was scared to death of meeting, she said they're not taking away your pain. What they were doing was putting a blanket over the whole thing. Just a blanket, just a little soothing blanket. Everything was still going on underneath it. If you ripped it away, the pain will come rushing out. So there's a lot of digging and delving in a nice, supportive, loving way that needs to go on. So let's just go over to these questions. Carl asked, is it a cop-out? Using drugs, is it a cop-out? Is it avoiding something? Well, yeah, in one way, it is avoiding something. Absolutely, it is. Yeah. I was avoiding the psychological trauma that I'd suffered some years ago. As I said, more than one thing. So I was avoiding that, and the drugs were a great way to really forget it and focus on something else. It's not a cop-out in a negative sense, though. It's a positive cop-out. What am I doing? I'm trying to protect myself. I don't want to hurt anymore. Thank you. I'd rather not. It hurts enough without making it worse. So in a way, it's a cop-out, and in a way, well, not really. So that's not a very good answer, really, I guess. Talk about
Well,
keeping the doors open.
you have to change your state, and either it's avoiding something or it's trying to reach out for some special state, a pleasant or at least numb, where you are not feeling what you don't like to feel.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and then we had another question from Molly. Molly's in Lou in Cornwall. That really excited me. Somebody in Lou in Cornwall. I love Lou. Leo doesn't know what we're talking about.
No.
It's a beautiful seaside fishing village on the Cornish coast, I guess the south coast it is. Beautiful place. Fish and chips, incredible. And one particular
Someday
cafe.
I'll be there. You'll take me
Someday,
there.
yeah, I'll take you. I'll buy you fish and chips. So, how can we hide from our emotions? That was Molly's question. How can we hide from our emotions? The easy answer, the short answer is two letters. No, we can't. We can't hide from our emotions. They're part and parcel of what make us human.
Emotions are something. Go on.
No, carry on. I'll come back. Don't worry.
Emotions are an inherent part of being human. I agree completely, and they are the signals. Emotions are signals, like whether you see red or blue, whether you feel warm or cold, and so emotions are this in the same way. signal you about what you're experiencing. And if they are too strong, that means the experience is too big. And the only way to deal with emotions is to live through emotions, to feel them fully. It's not about expressing your emotions. It's a bit different thing. Expressing and living through emotions are not the same. But as soon as you at least turn towards your emotions and try not to hide them or from them, you are starting to explore. And when you take them as the part and parcel of your uh, core self, if you you view them as signals, a system of signals, then it appears that they are not that scary when you try to hide from them.
Yeah, great way of putting it. I'd just to add to that, signals and thoughts. So our emotions are signals of what's going on. If you think about it like this, if something happy happens to you, what do? You feel good. You think, oh, this is happy. I like this. Therefore, you feel good. If 20 happy things, different unrelated events happen to you today, by the end of the day, when you go to sleep, you're going to feel fantastic. And it may well be that you'll wake up feeling fantastic tomorrow morning and go looking for more happy things, more happy emotions. So that feeds the emotions. The same is true in the opposite direction. So if we have a negative feeling, a negative emotion, and we keep looking for more negative emotions, they build up to such a point that they become difficult to manage. And that's where we start to need support, where we start to need help with it, be it individual or group help, doesn't really matter. But it starts to build, and that becomes difficult. The way we think about things also adds to the emotion. Here's a little exercise. Let's say something challenging happens. Give me something challenging, Lee, or something small. Anything
Just
small. Sorry?
just probably walking on the street and hear a car driving nearby and too close to you.
Yeah,
Probably.
yeah. Okay, that's a good one. Yeah, that driver shouldn't have done that. They were driving too close. That's dangerous, etc.,
It's
etc., etc.
dangerous.
You have all these thoughts about it, how you're thinking about it, and that creates emotion. The emotion it may create is the emotion of anger. And you start to get angry. And then you see another event, similar, not the same, but another event that creates a similar emotion because of the way you're thinking about it. And suddenly you've got a lot of anger because of all these non-related events in a similar theme. So when that happened with the car, maybe a good way to deal with it was to say, interesting. I'm having an angry thought. That's curious. Why do I feel angry about that? So look at it calmly. Try and step back a little bit and look at whatever the emotion is. Okay, maybe the car's not the best example.
Maybe
I threw a
not.
wobbler a few days ago because a car came directly at me because it was overtaking another car on a bend. So I got really frustrated. But afterwards, I
It's
did
scary,
realize,
but I thought about the car because there's no thought first. It's the reaction first. When
yeah,
the reaction and scares you,
yeah,
because it's dangerous. But if you're
mm,
in a good mood, you probably would, oh shit, just. But
idiot.
probably you've had a a fight in the morning with a spouse or somebody, and your reaction to this car, which is basically dangerous but obvious,
Yeah,
becomes angry because you had this uh, load of previous emotion, and
yeah,
being scared triggers that bigger emotion you had before.
yeah,
So it's and then it's important to when you feel this big emotion. And I completely agree that one of the best ways to do it, but you have to learn it, because we are not taught to deal with our emotions in our modern culture. But it's an exercise basically you have to use to learn it. It's okay, just stepping aside and looking at it as a neutral signal. What's going on? Why am I having this angry reaction? Why am I angry? I'm scared, yes, but why am I angry? Probably because I had that fight. So and you kind of, when you kind of it's not distracting yourself. It's not uh, trying to not to notice, trying to hide the emotion, but it's just observing the emotion, and it's a good practice to use,
Yeah, yeah, it's
because
brilliant practice.
it subsides while you are observing it. Oh, I
Yeah,
understand now.
yeah. I think let's just for a few seconds, because we're a little bit short on time. Let's just talk about habits.
Uh-huh.
There's a lot of scientific study about habits. How long does it take to form a habit is one of the big questions that they've been asking. And there are various theories. One of the theories says if you repeat something around about 10,000 times or over 6 months, because you probably would take 6 months to do something 10,000 times, it will then begin to become a habit. Remember, this can work in two directions, good habits and bad habits. So the habit of when something happens that fires in emotion, of saying, wow, I'm having the thought that, whatever the thought is, that's curious, that's interesting, and then allow yourself to think about it. If you keep repeating that, it will become a positive habit. And when that becomes a positive habit where you're questioning what's happening with your emotions, the emotions will, in turn, become a little bit easier to deal with and manage. We all have challenging emotions. I certainly do. I had them yesterday when I rode through some cut grass on my mountain bike, and I ended up with two, not flat tires, trash tires. I need to buy two new tires. You know, I had an emotion about that. There's
Oh,
no doubt about
I
it.
bet. Sorry about that.
I can still laugh. Anyway, there was another question, and I'm sorry to the person who asked the question because I didn't make a note of your name. It may have been Paul or something like that. How long does it take to recover? That is a huge, huge question. How long does it take to recover? So we're talking about recovery being something that is possible. Well, we need to start to believe that. Between you and I could take a month of meeting with a therapist to begin to believe it. You may take 2 weeks or 2 months. Who can say? We're all different. We all look at things in different ways. Our perspectives on life are slightly different. None of us are the same, and that's something we should be celebrating. So recovery, believing that recovery is possible, takes a long time, and it varies. What do you think, Leo? I know that you can't give me a date on this.
Uh, Well, recovery, it's really very personal, but we have to take into consideration both the brain processes, because it takes effort, and it takes the rebuilding of many brain networks, because building a habit, it's basically rebuilding the habits, the neural pathways. And for me, in my practice as a therapist, the longest time goes to the most traumatized people, because they don't have any habit to share things. They don't believe. They just they know that, yeah, you have to go to a psychologist, probably because they do suffer and they go to a psychologist. But even though they formally trust me, inside their personalities they don't trust anybody. They don't trust me as well. And so it's like walking around and trying to sneak into their, like, personal uh, well, becoming closer and becoming someone trustful, because usually it is back in their childhood that the important people around them were not were not safe enough. And so, and another thing is, like, one thing is being trusted and finding that rapport of uh, being close and working together, and the other thing is that, again, they don't have uh, a habit of being cared of and of taking care of themselves, and to save themselves through those times, they have to adapt in a very rigid way. There are so many ideas and beliefs about things, and they I always tell them that I'm so sorry for you pay me money just to trying to convince me or not taking my arguments, or and even being opposed to any types of exercises, because they're so scared that and so vulnerable, and the vulnerability is one thing that makes people act that way and feel that way. But the other thing, vulnerability and being open about it, is probably the main pathway to recovery. And so, yes,
Yeah.
sometimes it takes a long time. And I wanted to also mention that usually, when we're talking about a recovery from addiction, we are saying not that the person is cured, but he's like recovering or on rehabilitation, or uh, some other terms showing that alcoholic is always an alcoholic. It's just a remission, just like he's not using in this period of time, which may take years, and then he's definitely would will have a relapse or something. But nowadays we're kind of changing this attitude. Oh, yes, relapses are often in the part and parcel of a recovery process, but at the same time, it's like building building new habits, and re reviving. It's not all, I don't think it's a good word, but making the true you show up, and build your new life. Like, it's not the new you, but it's an old but forgotten, someone
Yeah.
scared and hidden,
The
and
authentic
someone
you
from
is
inside. Yeah,
useful.
the authentic you is showing up, but this authentic you doesn't have a habit to live in this world. That's probably how to help this person from the inside to adapt and become uh, make you who you are. Show people that this is what you are really inside.
Yeah. So yeah, absolutely. Some great points there. The thing about recovery, the question, how long does it take? So there isn't an answer, but I've been asked this question in a therapist setting, and I'm sure you have too, Leo. And my answer is always, first of all, this whole process is about you. It's not about me. It's not about me as a therapist wanting to earn loads and loads of money and keeping you on my books for the next 10 years. It doesn't work that way. Maybe it did once long ago in some places, but it doesn't work like that. The whole process is about the individual. The individual also can be part of a group. The group process is about the individuals in the group. It's not about fixing the whole group as a whole, as a bubble, because it's not a bubble, it's a group of individuals. So it's always about the individual. That's what it's about. And it's the individual really who sets the timetable for recovery. Yes, they've got help. Yes, they might have a therapist. Yes, they might have a coach who's helping them along with the process. But it's really about the individual and the speed that they can work at. So there is no answer. There is no magical, it takes a week, a month, a year. It may take more or less. We can't say. Okay. So we haven't done a particularly good job of looking at the processes that we can that we can use or that people can use themselves. So I've suggested the small idea of I'm having this thought and looking at that idea of what this thought is curiously, not judging, not examining, a bit like the weather exercise I did, I think it was last week. You know, it's a meditation where we can look at the sky and just breathe and relax and look at the sky and don't judge what's going on up there. We're not interested in what the weather's going to be bringing or what the weather just did. We're just looking at the sky. We're not judging, we're being curious. That's the key. No judgment. Curiosity is great. Okay, so we can do that by asking ourselves, why am I having this thought? How do we envision no pain and no addiction? I talked briefly when I was telling my story about breathing through the pain. When that exercise was introduced to me, I thought the physiotherapist who was introducing it had lost the plot. I thought, what is he talking about? How on earth can I breathe through the pain? In my case, it was my knee. Let's say it's a hand because you can see my hand. How can I breathe through the pain in the middle of that hand there? It doesn't compute. It's not logical. So the idea is that you focus on your breathing. You get a beautiful breathing flow going on. And once you've got that, you start to imagine breathing in through the pain in the center of that hand. Just imagine breathing in. The breath goes through. I feel it going through, and then I breathe it out. And I feel the breath going out through the hand. That doesn't work in 5 minutes. It took me a couple of weeks to be able to say, hey, I think I actually do feel something. And now it's a practice that I practice frequently because the benefits are incredible. It brings about relaxation. It doesn't physically take away pain, but mentally it helps stabilize what's going on around you. And if you can stabilize what's going on around you, it's easier to manage. And especially if you've got support. So, is there anything you want to add, Leo, in terms of little processes or ideas that people can practice on their own?
Talking about pain, I also like to teach people to imagine that with the breathing there comes some soothing, might be a warm sense, like it's a kind of comfortable heat there, or imagining soothing balm over the pain of the painful area, so that when you breathe in, you somehow like take the soothing balm, but when you're breathing out, it's like the balm goes into this painful place, spot, and is being absorbed and kind of working and healing the part of the body that hurts. If I like to add with sensations and visual images, and the more senses you add up to the exercise, or maybe you will be able to find out which is the best one for you. And probably if you are able to use them all, like 3 or 4 components to it might work better.
Yeah, brilliant. So what have we talked about today? Good grief, we've covered a lot. The bottom line is the human condition, and the human condition is not an illness, it's the way we are, is complicated. We all know that we're all different. We all know that our situations differ from one to another. Our addictions differ from one to another. Two alcoholics, not alcoholics for the same reasons. We've got all kinds of things that we've got to look at. So don't generalize. Don't be mean to yourself. Be kind to yourself. Be loving to yourself, because that helps a lot. Doesn't fix everything, but it certainly does help. That's all from me for today. Maybe what we can look at next week is how do we envision a different future against all the odds? How can we actually do that? What about you, Leo? Anything to add, finally?
I don't think so. I think it's time to cover up, and it was a good podcast and so many questions. Please make sure you prepare more questions for the next time, and you can ask them uh, on social media and on WhatsApp, so that we prepare more and probably more practical ideas to answer your questions.
Yeah. Okay. If you would like to leave a message on the Crossroads Facebook page, do so under this video, under the recording. Leave questions there. If you prefer not to leave questions out there in public, no problem. Click on my name or Leo's name, and the message will, as Facebook does, the message will get through to us. So you can leave messages privately. Nobody need know what they are. If you don't want us to use your name when we ask your question, then fine, just say, please don't use my name. We won't use your name. It's not a problem. All right, then. Have a beautiful week, everybody. Keep the questions coming, and we'll speak to you again at 1 o'clock UK time next Thursday. Take care.
See you next
Bye.
time. Bye.